Today, we have a great show for you. We have Margy Feldhuhn, who is the co-owner of Interview Connections, the first and leading podcast brokering agency. Margy and her business partner, Jessica, led an in-house staff of over 18 employees in their Rhode Island office and have successfully scaled their agency to 7 figures. Margy joined the company in 2016 as a contractor, becoming the very first employee in 2017, and equal co-owner by 2018. She has helped to quickly scale the business by designing and implementing systems to increase revenue, streamline operations, and achieve the highest quality of client excellence. Margy has taken a creative role in the agency as well, co-hosting and producing podcasts, videos, content for different aspects of the company. Margy is active in animal rescue and organizes a yearly fundraiser called Art of Animals. In 2019, she was recognized for her efforts with a Humane Heroes Award. She is busy when she's not busy recruiting pets in need. You can find her listening to true crime podcasts, strolling around her town with her blind Maltese, Harold. Margy, welcome to the show. How are you?
Evan, thank you so much for having me. I am great. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. Well, on the animal side of things, we just got a puppy on Mother's Day.
Wow, you're
So,
brave. Puppies are so cute and so much work.
oh man, tell me about it. So, found him being, he was in a box of puppies with people hawking them away on the side of the road, free puppies. And we had a dog a few years ago, and he was a real pain in the butt. Unfortunately, we had to put him down. He was very
Oh.
young, but he hurt his back, and there was just no way of coming back from that. And so I didn't want another animal.
Hmm.
And especially having 2 boys, they are enough of an animals by themselves.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, I had this moment of weakness when I was driving by because my 2 young boys have been asking me for a puppy. My wife has been asking for a puppy. So we got one, and we named him Milo. He is a pit/blue heeler mix.
Oh, cute.
So he's in our bedroom right now. If he walks out, I'll show him to you later. But
Oh, I would love that. Well, congratulations on your new puppy.
thank you. I appreciate that. Well, we're not here to talk about the dog, but I figured, hey, there's something in common there. I actually want to talk to you just kind of about your journey, about your business, the lessons that you've learned along the way. And so one of the things about you that really impressed me is that you went from being someone who was contracted by the company to an employee to co-owner. And so what lessons did you learn along the way that you had to make the mental shifts from essentially being outsourced to an employee to becoming a co-owner? Because that doesn't happen for a lot of people. What mindset did you have to have through that process?
That's a great question. And mindset really is my huge focus and has been for a really long time. So the external result that people see of going within, only a few years from a contractor to a 50% owner looks kind of crazy. And it's like that picture of the iceberg and you only really see the tip. So that's the tip. But underneath the water is all of the personal development and mindset work, for 26 years that got me up to that point. It's interesting that you would say like going from just a contractor to then being an employee of the business to then the owner. So when I became a contractor, I loved it. I really was unemployable, not because I wasn't a good employee, but because I hated being an employee and I didn't like having a boss and I didn't like being told what to do. And so I would get jobs. I would go as far as I could, as fast as I could. I would learn really fast. I would figure out how to be the best person. And then within a few months, I'd be so bored and so miserable and I would leave. And I moved a lot because I love to travel. So I had this very choppy resume and was a little concerned to be nearing 30 and still not really be able to hold a job because I would get so bored I would leave. Like I wasn't getting fired, but still I was like, is there something wrong with me? And then I realized when I became a contractor and was able to set my own hours and work from home, even though I only had one client, so I wasn't, an entrepreneur, I was really just freelancing. I was like, this is it. I love being able to work from home. I love being able to figure out how to do stuff. No one's training me. And I was also, because I was booking our clients on podcasts, I was listening to these amazing entrepreneurs on podcasts because I was getting to know my clients. And I was so inspired by all of their different paths to success and how they had created so much abundance and such incredible things in totally different, areas from each other in so many different ways. And I was like, wow, I love this. I'm an entrepreneur. I want the time freedom. I want, more money. And then when I moved back, I was in Colorado at the time. I moved back home to Rhode Island and was offered an employee position as the first employee, which is being the first employee of a company is a good position to be in. But at the time, I loved my time freedom so much as a contractor that I accepted it. And then I went home and I cried because I thought it felt in a way like a step backwards, because I was like, oh, I'm just an employee again. This is, what I don't like. And I felt intuitively, probably from doing so much mindset stuff and kind of like meditating and tapping into intuition or whatever you want to call it, I did feel intuitively that it was a step forward, which is why I accepted the role as an employee. But at the time, I was like, this isn't what I asked for. This isn't the direction I wanted to be moving in. And then, of course, becoming an employee was the best path to get that freedom again and to become a business owner.
So you and I sound like we have similar journeys, because before I got into real estate 7 years ago, I think I had like 21 jobs in 4 years.
Wow. Yeah.
And some I quit because the exact same scenario. Some I got fired from because I was just like, you are a terrible leader. Get out of my way and let me do this. Which didn't work well either. So it sounds like you had this process of essentially self-discovery, of familiarity, like, okay, I like this, but then all of a sudden you took a step, what felt like you said a step backwards, but it ended up being a step forward. How did you internalize that, wrestle with that specifically? Because what I think the different that I can see in what you're saying, the mindset between becoming an employee again versus when you were an employee before, is you actually had more of an ownership mindset than you did before. So how did you take a position as an employee with an ownership mindset? And how did that transcend into you co-owning part of Interview Connections?
Yes, I definitely did go into being an employee with a mindset of being an owner. And I didn't do that. I didn't necessarily do that consciously. I wasn't saying to myself, I'm going to go in and act like an owner and then I'm going to own half the business. At that point, that would have sounded crazy, like even to me. But I did go into it very all in. And what happened in 2017 in the business was that was the first year in January that I became the first employee. And then we made the switch over from having a model where we had a team of over 10 contractors to getting rid of all our contractors and hiring only in-house employees in Rhode Island. And we did not know how to do that. We did not know how to recruit and find employees and train employees. The contractor model had been going fine, but to level up, we needed to move to employees, but it was incredibly challenging. And Jess and I really were in the trenches together. It was not a clock in and clock out type of experience. We were in it together. There was crying. There was a lot of learning. And it really felt like we were partners through the whole thing. So it was less strategically being like, I'm going to act like an owner so that I can have ownership, and really just being invested in the growth of the business and being loyal to Jess to the point where it wasn't like, well, good luck dealing with your business. It was like, we're in it together. Like everything bad that's happening, we're both going to deal with it. Everything good is really a shared win. And that was great for Jess as a business owner, because all of us who have businesses know when you have an employee like that who's so all in with you, it makes everything so much easier. And it worked out for me as well, because I was able to stay as an employee without getting bored and leaving because I was really more of an owner. Like no one was training me. I was able to design systems. I was able to create. So I had so much freedom. Eventually, obviously, I wouldn't have stayed an employee forever and just knew that because I was an entrepreneur. And even with the flexibility to create, I still wanted more skin in the game. But it was that attitude of being all in that was the most important thing.
So how did that conversation go? Did Jess bring it to you, or did you bring it to Jess about wanting to be part owner in this company?
So we had started a couple side projects together. One of them was a podcast that we would record every Sunday. So we were doing this podcast together, which was sort of like a little micro business, like you have to have your operations and all of that. So it was almost like we were working on a project together, but it did feel like a little business. And we started talking about other businesses that we could start. We started talking about potentially having a network of podcasts and a media company, and really just like visioning and talking about all this stuff. So we were in conversations about starting different new businesses as partners. And at one point we went out to lunch and Jess was like, well, do you want to be a business owner? And I said, yes, like so fast. I think it was like a little bit alarming. She was like, okay. And then at that point, it couldn't be unsaid. So we both kind of knew where we were standing. And obviously I wasn't giving an ultimatum or anything like that, but she knew I wanted to be a business owner. We were talking about these other businesses. And she's told me since that she realized that either I was going to go off and start something else, or I needed ownership in that company to stay in it. And we worked so well together. I think we both knew that by partnering and by having equal skin in the game, we would be able to scale way faster and way farther.
Awesome. So you've dealt with employees, you work with a lot of different podcasters, such as myself,
Yep.
where you bring people to us to have on our show, or also like me to get on other people's shows. And you've really got to see how people can thrive in interviews.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about, for the person that's listening, obviously not everyone here is going to be a podcast host or be on podcasts, but they are in interview situations where they're trying to sell their product or an idea to a person or their spouse or their kids. What are some tips that you've learned along the path of journeying through interview connections that would help someone become better at interviews and selling themselves?
The biggest one would definitely be to have a mindset of serving first. That is what we tell our clients when they're going to be guesting on a show, that they should always go into it with an attitude of, how can I best serve your audience? How can I best give value to your audience? The people who go into it with that mindset are the ones who see an incredible ROI from podcast guesting, because they're so genuine and because they truly want to give value. People pick up on that and then obviously want to work with them. And that's true for any type of conversation, a sales conversation. If you're negotiating for a raise, really look at how you can serve and how you can give, and people respond to that.
Okay. So let's role play here. I am, let's say an insurance agent or a housekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in an interview trying to sell my services. What would be maybe some key points that I should think about, or questions that I should ask in order to show that I'm here to serve?
I love that. Well, if you are a service-based entrepreneur, you are here to serve. So I would think about the pain points that you're solving for your clients and really lead with those solutions. And then also in a sales conversation, I would ask more questions and listen. So in the example of a house cleaner, I love that one because as a busy entrepreneur, I don't have time to stay on top of house stuff. So someone coming to me selling me house cleaning would be doing me a gigantic favor. So that would be a great conversation, because if they're going into it like, okay, how do you feel about the cleaning now? Is it getting done? How do you feel about the fact that it's not getting done? Or, what could you be doing with that time you're spending cleaning? I could be making way more money if I focus on the business rather than spending those hours cleaning my house. So to me, it's really a no-brainer to hire a service like that. So it's getting clear on the pain points of your target audience and then targeting the right person. Because if I was someone who was unemployed and I didn't have kids and I didn't have a lot going on, I'm not a good target market for a house cleaner. I don't really need that help. So I think by targeting someone who it's going to be a no-brainer for, who's really busy or an entrepreneur, and then leading with their pain points and how you're solving them, it's not even a sales conversation. It's like, such a layup.
Right. That's actually a really great point, is knowing what people's pain points are before you get into the conversation and having the solution for those. That's a great point. Going back to kind of what you were saying before, in terms of you'd work at a place, you'd do really well, you'd get bored, and then you would leave. And that was a consistent thing or pattern in your life up until, not now, but a few years ago, back in 2016, when you became a contractor for Interview Connections. So here's my question related around that. So you have a passion for rescuing animals, and I noticed that your dog Harold became a part of your business team. What advice do you have for people who are trying to bring other passions into what they're currently doing so that it makes them excited to wake up every single day and to hit the grind hard?
That's a great question. And it's especially good when it comes to animal rescue, because people are always like, why don't you start a business in animal rescue? You love it so much. And that would be a terrible fit for me, because the burnout would be so high and it would be very hard for me to focus on profits with something like that, because I wouldn't want to take anything for myself. I would feel guilty. It wouldn't be a good business for me to run. It would just burn me out and make me feel bad. But my business, Interview Connections, booking entrepreneurs on podcasts, I can find ways to contribute to the things I care about and really care about the business. So my first income goal was to be able to afford to adopt a special needs pet. And now I have Harold. I hit that goal and I adopted this senior blind dog with like every health problem possible. But so things like that, I think tying in your income goals to things that really are fulfilling and meaningful. And there's nothing wrong with like a new house and stuff like that. Go for that stuff too, but making sure you're balancing it out with the impact that you want to have on your community. And I think that's really important.
I think so many times when it comes to this idea of making an impact in the world, we underestimate what we can do over a lifetime, but we overestimate what we can do in a year and tend to get discouraged. And
Mm-hmm.
so I really liked the way that you broke that down, how with Harold, your first goal was to get to an income where you could provide for a special needs dog. I have this grand idea of having an orphanage overseas, but before I can get there, just sponsor one orphan.
Yes.
And so I really like how you kind of laid that out, where you can add your passions into your life on an increment level that gives fulfilling without having, because if I tried to go all in on an orphanage now, you're right, it would be a distraction, it would be a burnout, and I would probably end up hating it, because I, since that is a nonprofit and I don't have a lot of skills in that area, and starting something from scratch would take away from being able to do what I do successfully and then just fund my passions.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
essentially, I think what you're saying, and if I'm understanding you correctly, is our work is a stepstone or a platform for us to achieve some of our passions and desires.
Yes, absolutely. And then kind of dovetailing with that, finding the meaning in what you do. Because yes, obviously my business is not rescuing animals. We're not a nonprofit. It's not an obvious, charity or anything like that. But really taking the time to fall in love with your own business regularly in a way that you really tap back into the meaning. Because my favorite quote is by Mother Teresa: find someone who believes he is alone and convince him that he's not. And when you hear someone on a podcast and you suddenly, because of a story they tell, you relate so deeply to their experience and you feel that feeling that I think we all recognize of connection and really like being part of the larger humanity, relating to someone. And people hear podcasts who might be very isolated anyway, you don't know where people are at. And that truly has an impact on people. Our clients are out there sharing their success, sharing their failure, and that ripple effect of the people who hear their story and are touched and feel connection, who feel motivated to keep going, or they hear the answer to what has been stopping them. It changes lives. It changes that person's lives. It changes their family's lives. There's a ripple effect on the community and the ways that they're then able to impact it. So you really can look at whatever you're doing and find a way to trace it back to that meaning so that you are rooted in that and able to get up every day and really be passionate and have conviction.
That's so good. Right now, for a lot of people, quarantine life is different than regular life. In my quarantine life, I sleep in a lot more just because I have two boys that are at home, not in daycare, not in school. And so my life looks a lot different when, they were in school, in daycare, and I was off to work at a specific time. Right now I'm staying from home, playing stay-at-home dad, and being an entrepreneur and working. Quarantine aside, describe to me your perfect workday, your habits, the affirmations, from the moment you wake up, what time that is, to the moment you go to bed, and what time that is, and all in between. What does your perfect day look like?
I love that. And honestly, my day hasn't changed really in quarantine. I had basically stopped going into the office. We do have a staff, we do have an office, but I like working from home. I love being able to work remotely. I'm obsessed with it. I love being home with my pets. So an ideal day really would be what my day already is, maybe a little shorter. But I wake up, I have coffee, I exercise, I take a shower, I do a meditation. I use an app called Insight Timer, and they have so many amazing guided meditations, like anything you could possibly think of. And they have ratings and reviews. It's a really good app. So I pick a 15-minute guided meditation to do. And then I'm centered. So now I've done my meditation, I've exercised, I've showered, I'm ready for the day. And then I open my computer and start working about 10. And then I take the dog for a walk for about 30 to 45 minutes at some point throughout the day, depending on my schedule and when the weather is nice. And then I stop working in theory around 4:30. Lately, we've been working a lot more with everything going on and with the quarantine. So a lot of people I know are working less. I think most of us who are entrepreneurs, especially if you have kids home, I do not, but my partner does. We're actually working more. So it's not quite 4:30, but I would like to get back to that point, and then just having time at home to unwind and relax after that.
Right. Oh yeah, you're absolutely right. It's definitely a juggling act because a lot of the stuff I get done is when they're going to bed.
Yeah.
Or whatever stuff I can get done during the day, and then I do that. But luckily, my parents live like 3 doors down from us.
Oh,
And
perfect.
so I have a built-in babysitter anytime I shouldn't say anytime I need, but they're pretty awesome. And that's a big help. Like, hey, I need to go show 5 houses. So here you are.
Awesome.
But anyway, so the podcast is the whole person podcast that, there's 6 main areas of life that make up a whole person: faith, family, finances, friendship, fitness, and fun. What are some areas of success that you have seen in your own life some habits, some areas of mastery that you feel like you've accomplished that you can talk to our audience about based off of those areas? It doesn't have to be all of them, just one that you feel like you got a handle on.
Well, I would say business and finance are probably the most obvious ones. And then I would also add family, but probably in a different way than people might think.
Well, expound. What makes you better in those areas? Like some lessons that you've learned.
So for business, I would really say the biggest thing is really enjoying the game. If you don't enjoy the game of business, like obviously there are seasons that are more stressful, but if, that season shouldn't spread out forever. If you really love business and it's fun for you and it's a game for you and solving these problems that keep coming up is exciting, then I would say business is for you. And I would say if that's not the case, that's okay, but maybe it's not. So I would say that's the biggest thing in business that I found success in, is really being able to enjoy the game.
Okay, perfect. So I like to typically end each show with about 3 questions. The first question is, what is the biggest lie in self-talk that you currently struggle with?
Oh, cool. That's such a good question. All right. So like a lie that like my inner monologue tells me.
Correct.
I would say the biggest, oh, this is such a good question. I would say the biggest lie is projecting these negative futures. Like I'm writing a book right now, and projecting these negative futures that feel real and then being like, this isn't actually happening. Like I do literally this morning, and I do so much mindset stuff. Overall, I feel great, but those things still pop up. And this morning I was like, oh my gosh, what if it's like, people hate the book, like there's something in the book that people find really upsetting and I didn't even realize it, and everybody's just like bashing it online and like turns on me, and like that doesn't really make any sense. But projecting that future, I felt a second of fear, as if that future was actually playing out, as if I wasn't just like standing in my bathroom brushing my teeth.
That's awesome. Just a side note, vote of confidence here for you. That would be better than nothing happening on your book.
That's true. I know.
Because even bad publicity is good publicity over no publicity.
That's a great point.
So just, that's not the worst thing that could happen.
Yes, very true. Now I have something else to freak out about tomorrow morning.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that.
No, I'm totally kidding.
Oh, that was awesome. All right. So here's the next question. What brings you peace?
Deep breathing.
Yes. Go into that.
I love that moment of like, no matter what you're doing, and sometimes I may not have time for the 15-minute meditation at the beginning of the day. So even just like taking a conscious deep breath in and holding it and breathing out, whatever I'm doing, I could be like opening the refrigerator, I could be walking to the next room, I could be between calls. Even just that second of tapping into presence makes such a difference.
You hit the nail on the head on that. That's one of my favorite things to do as well. And for those of you that struggle with anxiety, that deep breathing when you're going through anxiety is probably one of the best things that you can do. Just a side note here, Margy, you don't know my story, but the podcasters who listen consistently do. And last year was one of my worst years I've ever experienced in my adult life. And, one of the things that it caused me to focus on was overcoming the anxiety. We had 7 financial, I don't want to say catastrophes, but they felt like catastrophes happened in our family. We had 4 ER visits. I had 2 surgeries. My wife had 2 DNCs, which is basically, for those of you who don't know, if you lose a baby and the baby didn't come out naturally, they have to go in and take it out. And, we gave money to an orphan to have life-saving surgery, and she died on the operating table. I mean, we had a lot of stuff, and all of that was financial. But it caused me to become overwhelmed with anxiety in a way that I'd never experienced before. And because of it, I had to really focus on overcoming anxiety. And I did really well in that area. And then, as the fourth and fifth and sixth and seventh thing rolled around, it wasn't as internally anxious for me. Well, and then, 6 months later, freaking COVID happens.
Yeah.
And that anxiety rushes back in way more intense than I've ever experienced before on a daily basis, where I felt like there were times I was going to have a panic attack because I allowed fear to grip me. And that's essentially what anxiety is. And you were talking about this with your book idea, where we allow fear of the future, fear of the unknown, to control our mindset and our mentality of what we think is going to happen. And I am, I do that so much. And as time progressed, I realized this COVID thing's not going to go away, but I have to get back to doing what I was doing before, which is in those moments of stress, anxiety. And I think part of that too is, I have my 2 boys under 5 years old at home all the time with me, and that causes high anxiety as well.
Yeah.
But taking deep breaths. So Margie, when you talked about deep breathing helps bring peace, that's just one of the actual physical things someone can do instantly wherever you're at to start taking control of your mind, your emotions, and your heart. So that's my tidbit there, because I'm going through that on a daily basis right now.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm so sorry to hear about everything that happened last year. And actually, I had that type of year where everything fell apart in one year in 2015. So it's probably not a coincidence that all that work I had to do mindset wise and breathing to get through that year is what kind of catapulted me into getting my footing in 2016, 2017, and 2018. So I do think that those terrible years, the upside of them is that you're training every day just to get relief and to keep going, and you're building those muscles that you then use down the line.
You're making a really great point there, how it becomes a foothold for you to take a step up to the next level. Because here's the thing, and this is just me being vulnerable. I mean, last year sucked, really bad. And for a lot of people, 2020 sucks really bad. My wife's in my 2020 is going pretty good. Despite COVID, despite all these things, we're really lucky. And I think part of that is because we had to make some hard changes in 2019. We made some hard changes financially. We made some hard changes mentally, emotionally. And then when the pandemic happened and the shutdown happened, we had already had a success and a track record of getting things in order. Because here's the thing, a lot of that stuff, I mean, we had 2 cars. I didn't even share this. So we lost 2 cars last year as well in the midst of all that. And so it was one of those things where it was do we go get new loans? And for whatever reason, internally, we just said, no, we're not going to go get a loan, because that will take our margin away and that will cause more stress. And by the grace of God, I had a couple transactions that went through that allowed us to get a car fixed and to buy a car in cash. Then we started creating margin. We started being wise, better stewards. We started doing things differently. And then when COVID happened, oh dear God, if we hadn't made those changes, we would be in a far worse position now. We'd probably be close to bankruptcy had we not made those changes. But because we made those changes, when more times of uncertainty, it makes you stronger in the midst of the storms. So I really, really like how you said that that taking those moments of pain and using it to level up will actually help you in the next stage of life. That was so awesome. Man, you have so many good nuggets here. I just love it.
Thank you so much. This is a great interview.
Good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Now, what is the best decision you have ever made?
So this is kind of going to take a dark turn, but in 2015, I am an only child. I'm very close with both my parents. They're both very brilliant lawyers, but they were also hoarders. And I hated growing up in a hoarded house. It stressed me out. And I also felt so sad when I grew up to think about my parents living like that. So I made a decision to clean out the house. And I made that decision. I was living in Taiwan as an English teacher. I moved to Taiwan in 2013. And that's when I first started in 2013 being like, when I get home from Taiwan, I'm going to take this project on. I'm going to clean the house. And when I was in Taiwan, I got there 2013. In 2015, I was still there. And I found out that my dad had died by suicide. And again, we were really close and it was very unexpected. And so I had to do an international move. I had to move home from Taiwan to Rhode Island where my mom was. And I kept going with the decision to clean the house. And I spent 5.5 months all day, every day, including weekends, working from like 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. every single day. I figured out how to get a dumpster. I figured out how to find and hire the right people to help me. And got it done. And it was like everything that could possibly go wrong did. I was in terrible grief and bereavement, and so was my mom. And I was like dragging her along because I needed her help sorting stuff and I think she was going to kill me. But that decision to take that on with even with everything and to do it really was the foundation of everything. Being able to take care of my mom like that changed who I was and how I was showing up. And it also was the foundation for my entrepreneurial success because all of the skills in that project, and people told me I couldn't do that. It was a 6-bedroom house. It was a gigantic job. And people said, don't take that on. You've been through enough. There's no way you can do that. And I did it. And that was really the best decision I ever made for myself and also for my family.
Well, one, I'm really sorry to hear about that. I just can't imagine.
It was a lot, but you better believe that after going through all that COVID hitting, I'm like, I can take anything.
I bet.
Like, yeah.
Can I ask some deeper questions?
Yes.
Do you think the way that the house was contributed to your dad's mental state?
That's a good question. No, I think that it was more of a reflection of his mental state. He was very brilliant. He was very funny and very successful as a lawyer, but he had a lot of unprocessed trauma from his childhood. And being born in the 50s, I don't think it was as accepted to reach out and ask for help. So yes, he had depression, but I believe that he died of shame, not depression. And I think that happens to way too many people, especially to men. And that's another reason why, like, find someone who believes he is alone and convince him that he's not. It's so important for those of us who are ready to be sharing our struggles so that that person listening to a podcast who may be totally isolated, without them having to reach out and share with someone, they can hear us and feel that connection and belonging that will hopefully help them get through whatever it is they're going through.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. Couple things that are coming to mind, two different rabbit trails almost. In terms of your story with your father, I just kind of like had this picture of this analogy, where the house is almost a representation of the mind and the soul, where we just keep so much buried inside and don't clean house. And how you were talking about how opening ourselves up, sharing it, can clean out the internal soul that we have to allow healing and cleansing to come in. And it's really funny because I didn't think I'd ever talk about this yet, but sure, why not? So let's see, about 7 weeks ago, I I got an ad for a men's recovery group online on Facebook. And what caught my attention was the guy that was advertising it. His advertising was, if you want to get better in faith, family, finances, friendship, fitness. And he didn't have fun on there. And I was like, dude, this guy's like has a podcast with almost the exact same material as me, but towards recovery. And I looked at that and was like, what the hell? Let's just join this. Let's journey down this road and see what happens. And through that process, I started becoming around other men that were sharing their stories and their journeys, and it just blew my mind. And then it made me take inventory of my life and some of the difficulties and traumas and struggles that I have had over 20 years. And then in the 7 weeks that I've been a part of this, I have seen personally greater freedom in the areas of my own struggle than I've had in 20 years. And
That's
so,
awesome.
and I'll probably share with that stuff later as more stuff happens. But you are absolutely right in what you're saying. Say the Mother Teresa quote again.
Find someone who believes he is alone and convince him that he's not.
Man, that is so good. Well, before we end, do you have any questions? Do you have anything else that you just want to share with the audience, maybe about your business, what you're doing, anything else on your heart? Platform, the microphone, it's all yours. Whatever you want to do.
Thank you. No, this has been great. We are, like I said, we work with entrepreneurs, booking them on podcasts so that they can not only grow their business, but also have a greater impact. So I always like to ask our clients, like, what is your why? Why did you first start this business? So yes, if you are a 6, 7, or 8-figure entrepreneur, so established, but really looking to get to the next level or just find a little bit more fulfillment and more impact in your message, we have a Facebook group called the Guest Expert Profit Lab. It's a free Facebook group. You just click to join and answer the question. So if you're interested, there's free trainings all the time in that group about how to leverage podcast guesting. We really get into the strategy and tactics of how to choose shows, how to pitch shows, and then some of the higher level marketing aspects of it. And all of that is free. So if you're interested, you can go to interviewconnections.com/group and then answer the member questions to get that content.
And for those of you who are thinking, hey, that sounds like a good idea, definitely do it. You don't have to do the hard thing like I did. Go create a show, create a website, do interviews week after week after week, which I love doing, okay? But if you can connect with someone who will do all that work and all you have to do is show up and talk, that is a great way to start, and it gives you authority in your space as well.
Yes, absolutely. And we find a lot of our clients end up starting their own podcasts after they've guested for a while. They've gotten a lay of the land and different formats of shows, but it is a great way to get started if you're not ready to do all that work of starting your own show, because it is so much work that you're doing. And I really commend you for what you're producing.
I appreciate that. Well, Margy, thank you so much for coming on today. I just appreciate your time, your journey, your story, the lessons that you have. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Evan.
Have a great day.
You too.